So Jake Paul is allegedly going to fight former UFC middleweight champion Michael Bisping. I say allegedly because I don't really believe it's going to happen, but Michael Bisping did say they reached out to his manager and offered the fight, and he accepted it. Well, this is a great fight for Michael Bisping because 1, he gets an easy bag, and 2, he gets an easy win, but it's a terrible idea for Jake Paul. First, let us look at both of the fighters, and I'm using the word fighter here very loosely. So as far as size goes, I don't think Michael Bisping has a major size advantage. He started his UFC career in the light heavyweight division, fighting at 205 pounds. And then after like 2 years, he dropped down to 185, and he fought the rest of his career out at the middleweight division. So the majority of his career, he's been fighting at 185 pounds, which he has to cut down to for weigh-ins. So I think it's safe to say Bisping has been walking around at over 200 pounds. And last month when Jake Paul fought Nate Robinson, he fought him at 189 pounds. And he put out a video, and he was talking about how he was on a strict diet, and in the video he was eating ice cubes because, you know, obviously ice cubes ain't got no calories in it. So I think that if he had to cut weight, or if you had to be on a strict diet to make 189, I think it's safe to say that Jake Paul also he also walks around at over 200 pounds. But Bisping has been retired for a few years now, so he most likely will be a little heavier than he was back when he was a fighter and having training camps and stuff. But I don't think it will be a major size advantage for Bisping. But as far as skills go, it won't even be close. Even though Bisping has never had a professional boxing match, and he even said on his podcast, hey Jake, I'm 0-0 as a boxer, you're 2-0 as a boxer, trying to, you know, emulate what Jake was saying. And he also was trying to be funny, trying to imply that Jake has more experience than him in boxing, which is technically true. But you can just look at you can look at Bisping's MMA career, and you know he's a pretty good striker, and you know he got the better hands. Plus, Michael Bisping started boxing when he was 18 years old. He's 41 now. That's 23 years. Jake Paul is 23 years old. So he's literally been doing it since Jake Paul was born. Also, Jake Paul has been talking a gang of trash. And we know from Bisping's career, just, you know, from past experiences, that he doesn't take kindly to people trash talking him. If you look at some of the guys that Bisping beat in the past, like Luke Rockhold, Jason Mayhem Miller, Jorge Rivera, guys who really went in on him, really trash talked him, and Bisping ended up winning the fight, he likes to rub it in their faces afterwards. Take the Rivera fight, for example. After he fought Rivera, he ran up to the corner and he spat on Rivera's cornerman, which I thought was quite gross. And after he beat Rocco for the belt, he tells him, oh, hey, you're still in the octagon, meaning that, you know, you don't know where you are because you just got knocked out. So he's like to rub his face in it. I thought that was funny. And Jake Paul tweeted that famous picture of Bisping, or in Bisping's case, that infamous picture when Dan Henderson knocked him out and then landed the big H-bomb follow-up punch with the caption, "My team is working on a melatonin brand deal for you and Nate." Damn, that was funny. So if this fight does happen, Bisping will beat the brakes off this kid and then proceed to show off and show out the way he's been doing to other opponents who trash talk him in the past. Now, I personally think Jake Paul should fight Dillon Danis. Jake Paul, he was initially calling out Conor McGregor, but I think since his brother's fighting Floyd Mayweather, he probably was angling to fight Conor on the same card, and then the Paul brothers would both be fighting the two biggest names in combat sports. The pay-per-view buys would be insane. A few weeks ago, he made that video saying, hey Conor, you're 0-1 as a boxer. I'm 2-0 as a boxer, which is true, but Conor's 0-1 is against Floyd Mayweather. I mean, Floyd Mayweather is arguably the GOAT. And Jake's 2-0 is against KSI's little brother and some former basketball player who I never even heard of. But then again, I don't really like basketball. So, you know, there's really no comparison there. And let's be real, that fight between Conor and Jake Paul is never going to happen. Conor's fighting Dustin Poirier, and he seems to really be focused right now, and he really wants to get back the UFC belt. And now that Khabib is retired, I think his biggest obstacle between him and the belt is gone, and he's not going to get distracted by Jake Paul's call out. But Conor McGregor's friend and his training partner Dillon Danis might be a viable option, and in my opinion, he's the best option. First off, he's been going at the Paul brothers for a few months now. When it was first announced that Logan Paul was taking on Floyd Mayweather, Dillon Danis tweeted this picture, and obviously it was in reference to Logan Paul. When he was in Japan, he filmed the dead body in the suicide forest, so he tweeted this, you know, obviously, you know, poking at that. Then Logan mentioned knocking out Dillon Danis on his podcast, and Danis responded with this tweet here. So there has been some beef already brewing between one of the Pauls, and when Jake Paul called out McGregor, Dillon Danis made several posts on social media directed at Jake Paul, so now he wants smoke with both the brothers. First, Dillon tweeted this telling Jake, "You just fought a retired NBA reject. Be careful what you wish for, little guy." Basically telling him McGregor is a whole different ball game than the amateurs you already beat up. He follows it up tweeting this picture of Jake Paul saying, "Dance for me, B." And on Instagram, he posted this picture with the caption, "Should I knock this B out?" So it became abundantly clear that Dillon is trying to position himself to fight Jake Paul, and why not? He can make a bag, he can get some recognition. And when Dillon Danis was doing an interview with Brendan Schaub for Food Truck Diaries, Jake Paul pulls up and this happens.
Hey, look, it's Conor McGregor's there.
So a backstory to build on leading up to this fight is solid, and I think this fight is also good for Jake because, for one, I think he can actually win it. If it's boxing, obviously. In MMA, Danis would submit Jake Paul no problem. He's still one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world. But in boxing, I think Jake Paul has a chance, and not just me. Even Daniel Cormier said Conor beats Jake Paul in a boxing match, but Jake Paul beats Dillon Danis. Dillon does not need to fight Jake Paul because he'll get beat up, end quote. I think that's possible. And between Conor, Bisping, and Danis, I think Danis makes the most sense because Conor's definitely not going to take the fight since he's busy with his real fighting career. I mean, he's in training camp right now. Bisping is retired and has no upcoming fights, but he would still beat the brakes off Jake Paul. I mean, that would just be wrong. That fight wouldn't even be a fair fight. But Danis is a pro MMA fighter, but he's only had 2 fights and he won both of them by submission. So when he was on the feet, he didn't look comfortable in the fights. For example, if you look at his Bellator debut when he against Kyle Walker, he was getting tagged up on the feet before he took the fight to the ground. If Jake Paul fights Dillon Danis and wins, he can say that he's a serious fighter because he just beat a pro MMA fighter, and that's a step above his two previous opponents, a former basketball player and another YouTuber. So he should be taken more seriously as a fighter and not just a YouTuber who fights. If he loses, well, he lost to a pro MMA fighter. No shame in that, right? Now, fans of MMA and jiu-jitsu and combat sports in general understand that Dillon Danis is not a striker and his specialty is jiu-jitsu, so boxing really isn't his element. But the average fan, the majority of the pay-per-view buyers, they don't understand what the difference is or why that even matters. Also, if Jake Paul wins, he can invoke Conor's name to hype up his next fight. Hey Conor, I beat your friend, your teammate, the guy who helps you prepare for fights. He can even create a narrative that Conor's scared of him after seeing what he did to Conor's friend, who was also a professional MMA fighter. I think it can grab the attention of many fans who are not hardcore fight fans. Now, is the narrative that Conor McGregor would ever be scared of Jake Paul stupid? Of course it is. Is it possible that Jake Paul would beat Conor McGregor in any form of combat? Of course it's not. Can the idea be wrapped up, packaged, and sold to the casual fan to garner more interest in Jake Paul boxing in the future? I think it can, and that's the whole point. So that's all I have to say about that. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.